Makes you wanna go. Na 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 na. Makes you wanna go.
Hello, 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 everybody. Thank you for joining Gab with Goldnbronze. We're so glad to have you here today. We know that there's many things that you could be doing. Many things that you could be doing. We have with us today my fabulous co-host, Mickey G. Say hey,
Hello.
Mickey.
Hey.
And we have with us Mr. Michael Bailey. Hello, Michael.
Hello, and good evening.
Hello, Michael.
I am going to say a little bit about you, and then Mickey G has a little spiel to do. So Michael Bailey is a nurse. He has been one for 50 years. He went back to school and got a secondary degree in exercise science with an emphasis on physiology. Michael has been a combat medic and a paramedic while in the Army, and later in the Army got his degree in nursing. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you for your service. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
All right. So I just want to let you know, our audience, that you can hear our show on Village Global Network on Mondays every other week at 10 a.m. Powered by Zeno FM with additional monitoring through online radio box on the following stations: Culture Shock Radio, Canada; Radio Fresio, Mexico; Rockbox FM, USA; and Wapta Music FM, Guadalupe. All right, here we go.
And we are on 191 radio stations across the globe. So, Michael, isn't that terrific?
I love it.
Ladies and gentlemen, our topic today is Michael speaks on femininity in women and femininity in men and the emasculation of men. So we are going to have a wonderful, engaging conversation. Tell us what you think about that topic, Michael.
Well, that's a mouthful and a half, but I just want to say, full disclosure, I love women. I think that was God's greatest gift. But over my years, I've watched a very disturbing trend. Femininity seems to be fading away like smoke from a cigarette. But I don't know whether it's on purpose or not, but women that I have observed and that I know in my age group, they're standing fast. But the women that are coming in generations past me, for some reason, it's a badge of courage not to be feminine or over feminine to the point of pornography.
So I want you to elaborate just a little bit on what do you mean by a badge of courage to not be feminine?
It's being feminine, as I was defined, as it was defined to me once, is that you want someone that is daunty and that's old-fashioned, and you want someone that stays at home and cooks and caters to a man. No, that's not my definition of femininity. Femininity is a woman that embraces herself, both her inner and outer self, her inner beauty as well as her outer beauty. It's someone that knows that they're a female and embraces that 360 degrees. And I don't see that as much today as I grew up as. I see now it's all about sex. It's all about how well I look, how my proportions of my body is, and how many likes I can get from showing my body, mostly unclothed.
So, why do you think that is? What is your theory as to how women have evolved to that point?
I think it's a lack of self-esteem. as a big portion of that. But also, I think men have been a great contributor to that. Women were looking for a center. Again, this is an observation over 60 years. I've been looking for a center, and men gave that with overly praise for physiology, the physical attributes, not necessarily of the whole person, but what they look like and how they dressed and how they carried themselves in a sexual manner.
So women essentially gave men what they were asking for. Is that what you're
Very
saying?
much so. Very
Just
much
to
so.
please the men and to draw the men. That's what it took, I guess, based on what the men were asking for.
I really believe that that's a very correct explanation, definition. Men wanted that, women accommodated that, and I think that has to do with to validate themselves.
So you think that men, even though women, is that your little dog back there?
Yeah, trying not to.
So go ahead. So you think that women accommodated men, but it's not really what men want?
I think it was not what women wanted, but I think men really don't want it. It's another way to exploit a woman. Just like you'll hear that expression mostly from women. I'm a product of a single mom, and she would always say, a man wants a woman for one thing, but then he wants a woman for another. In other words, the same woman that he wants to show off, he don't necessarily want to bring home and put a ring on her finger.
Mhm.
So that's kind of tricky because if
Yeah.
men are expressing that they want the big, whatever, booty,
Mhm.
busty woman, and women in society go out and give them what they want, and that's not what they want, then where does that leave the women?
Well, it's not that they don't want it. They want it, but they want it on their terms, and their terms is not a permanent. They,
So
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
Ask your question.
No, what I was going to say is, so that leaves this in the lap of the men that have given a double meaning to what they want. They want this kind of woman that they can take out and show off with all the curves, the bells and whistles, but then that's not the one they want to take home to their mother. But that's what they're encouraging at the same time. So what are women supposed to do?
Right.
Well, I think men basically bit off more than they can chew. They wanted all of those things, but they wanted it in the same packet. But then women took it to the extreme, trying to accommodate the man, and it's not something men want all the time, and or they don't want that person to be in their lives as the only entity. And I think that that's what leads to a lot of cheating, a lot of being the other woman, and so forth. They want the woman that is quote clean cut and wife material, but then they also want the one that's a little bit more racy and over the top. But they
So
don't
that's not
want
fair to the clean cut and homey woman, as you say, because then she has to always compete with the other.
and you see that a lot with divorces. It's always one of the, not always, but it's one of the central points in divorces. The man finds the woman that he thinks he wants to marry. He marries her. They start a family, but then he sees the woman out and about or at his job, and she looks good. Instead of window shopping and going back home, he just wants to go in and purchase that one too.
Wow, that's so unfair to the
It's
others.
very unfair, and women have taken that, trying to find that perfect man, and they've gone to the extremes with it. with the extra stuff, you know, not just the hair, the wigs, the makeup, and all of that, but they've actually changed body formations and body parts to get that man. But men really don't want all of that. And if you talk to a lot of men, they like to look at that for a short period of time, but for the long period of time, they don't want that woman standing in front of a mirror for, you know, 2 hours, and then standing in the closet for another hour trying to pick out that perfect outfit. That's coming from a lot of conversations I've had with men.
I see a
Well,
parallel. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
I see a parallel. Attention span is short. These men, they
Of
they
course.
see this woman, they purchase her for a little bit, but the parallel is pornography is temporary too. So I think that ups the ante as for what a man wants. He's studying pornography, and then he wants that at home. But if he doesn't have that at home, he's going to shop for it someplace else. But it's a temporary fix. It's like microwave. I want it now, and you can get pornography and women the same way. So do you think that that has something to do with it also?
I think that what you just said is a very valid point. Not so much that he would love to have the pornography from his wife, but he presents himself different for a wife when he hunts for a wife. And I say hunt because as animals, we do hunt for mates. We look for mates. He would like all of those in one picture, in one package rather, but it doesn't happen that way. And then there's always the biological clock. We're being told that you have to be married by a certain time. A woman has to be of a childbearing age by a certain time, or, you know, she has an expiration on her. Right. And I don't like to be sexist because I grew up in a female dominated household. I'm in a female dominated profession before I retired. And I have listened to women talk. I've listened to women make their thoughts very, very, very open. I've talked with men, and most of the men that I know, I wouldn't want to call them friends because they put women in a small category.
In a little bitty box. Yep.
And it's always about conquests and then the next one. They will take out a mortgage on their house to get a woman, but as soon as they get what they want, and it may not be one time, it may be multiple times, then she's discarded. And I guess that has a little bit to do with there's more women out there than there are men.
Yeah.
I have two questions to ask or 2 points to make. And that is, when a man is in pursuit of a wife and he meets a lady that he just likes, she's not the pornography type looking woman, but she's all those other moral, ethical, spiritual, financial, whatever things that he's looking for, his total package, except for that. Why can't a man and his wife have a conversation? They don't have to be to the extent of pornographic, but about what pleasures them, and they work to please each other.
Some do. And if you look at long-standing marriages, you wonder what is or what has been so instrumental in your marriage having longevity. And a lot of that is not that the woman is so submissive, it's that they've talked about things, they've agreed to things, and the man is happy with the agreement they came about. And I don't agree with what a lot of women. I see it as sour grapes, but they'll say it doesn't matter what you do, that a man's going to always go out and be dogging around or going to be on the hunt. I don't
agree with that.
I don't agree with that wholeheartedly, but I do basic my conversations with men. I do believe that's a lot to do it. But most men are basically window shoppers. They love to look, they love to admire, and then the smarter ones, they'll say, you know, let me just put my
Look
head
and
back
keep
on
going. Yeah.
and keep on going. And I was one of those men for a long time. And you know, and me and my ex-wife, we would have that conversation a lot about window shopping. And she says, I don't want you to get a crook in your neck when you see something attractive, not looking, as long as you don't change direction and follow. And
Yeah.
she said, because if I see something that's very attractive, I'm going to look. And I think
See, that's what I was about to say. As long as that works both ways, because women like to look too. We see
exactly,
handsome men, we see men full physique, six pack, eight pack, all of that. We like to look too, but doesn't
exactly.
mean that we're gonna go any further than just looking.
Right.
You know.
Right.
And that goes back to what I said. You know, in my nursing profession, I was mostly in a lot of times, especially when I did clinical. Uh, I was the only guy a lot of times on a shift, and because I mostly worked in specialty units, CCU, ICU, ER, and ER. There was a big influx of males there, but mostly in the unit there was mostly women.
Yeah.
And I've heard some things come out of women's mouths that I won't even repeat to this day, and that's when I realized that there was a lot more similarities with women than a lot of people like to admit.
Yeah.
Because if men and women had more conversations, they would find out that there were more similarities than there are differences. And if they sat down and had really honest, open conversation, a lot of stuff that's happening wouldn't persist.
Right. And so the second part of my question or comment was you said that a lot of guys that you talk to, or maybe you wouldn't want to be friends with. And I just want you to elaborate on that just a little bit.
Because I again, I'm raised by a mother. I'm four sisters. My best friends are women, and when I say that without reservation, I
Mhm.
have a friend now that I've not known as long as you have, Miss Golden. But I mean, I will go to bat. I would have her back 100%. I've
Do
been.
I know her?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
But I have seen her go through uh, two deaths in her relationships, and we've sit down and had long conversations about everything, uh, the world, from world events to intimacy and so forth. And we haven't had a relationship on an intimate basis, but I can count on a hand in all of my years of guys that I've sat down and had a full closure of conversations. It always goes back to women's body parts, conquests, and whatever. And a lot of those are married, long time marriages, and they're in there. And but
You know what? I think that's because you have eight sisters. I forget how many, a bunch of sisters. So
four,
you know how to communicate with females. And for me, there I'm the only girl, and all of my first line cousins are guys, and we can converse or conversate or whatever that proper word is. I get them mixed up. Some people use them interchangeably. One is incorrect. But anyway, we can have conversations about all those different things, current events, politics, religion,
exactly.
relationships, love, marriage, and all of that. And I would honestly say some of my closest friends are men. Uh, I seem to be able to communicate better and get along better with men on a platonic
Right.
level than with women.
Exactly.
And I've
And
tried to figure it out. I've
I was
longed for
just
those
getting ready to
sisterhoods. Yeah. I've
just get
longed
ready
for
to
those
interject that.
sisterhoods, but there's something that always prevents that level of connectivity. You
Yeah.
know, as with, I can be friends with a man easier than with a woman, and I try. You know,
Yeah.
it's
And I
just
and I don't even try anymore at this age and stage in my life with men, because I find them very, very shallow as a whole, very shallow. And I know I've got I'm people that I know that are married or in relationships or whatever, and it's almost like it's just a convenience thing, because as soon as they get an opportunity or as soon as they get a chance, they're on the prowl. And when I say I don't care about having male friends, I find my relationships with women a lot more enduring and a lot more deeper. Like you said before, I've got four sisters, but almost all of my cousins, second, third, are females. So I was always surrounded and nurtured by women. My grandmother, my great grandmother stayed alive till she was 106. I was about 8 or 9 years old when she passed,
Wow.
and I've always found conversations with women a little bit deeper and a little bit more introspective than with men. And I may have not spoken to the right men, but I know men of all persuasions,
Yeah.
from the most basic soldier uh, to lawyers, doctors, business owners, and so forth. And
That's,
I just find I'd rather have a female friend.
I have two trains of thought about that. One, uh, Goldnbronze, when you were talking about relationships with women, what I find is that we're so competitive with each other that we have problems supporting each other. But when you talk to a man is not in competition with you.
Right.
So it's easier if the man is not trying to pursue you for romance or sex or something, to be friends with a man. And you can learn a lot from men and those friendships.
But
So
that's very interesting because I don't compete with any woman.
no,
But
you
see,
don't.
women,
But
I
when
don't.
we look across the table at each other and sizing each other up, oh, is she curvy?
I agree.
What's she wearing?
And
I
I've
don't like
heard
that
those kind of
lipstick.
conversations. And
Yeah.
I have this one friend that I consider her one of my best friends in the Dallas area. And she was, I've known her since the early 90s. And I actually knew her, I think I knew her before I started at Prudential. No, it was a little bit after. But she was like, a man's wet dream. Coke bottle, uh, very pleasant, very soft spoken, physical features. And she wasn't no dummy. She was smart. She was very accomplished. And she had friends, and they would, in her presence, they would just dog her out. She's just, the way she dresses, and every time you look around, she got a different man, and da 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 da. And these were all women that didn't have relationships or didn't have men. And
Those are the ones.
I got tired of hearing about it in my presence. And I told him, I said, hey, if you're going to talk about her, let her be around. And then I'm sure she could hold her own. And I said, if you keep on talking about her in my presence, I'm going to call her.
Right,
And
right.
that's what I did.
Well, there's truth to that because I remember saying to some ladies, next time you decide to talk about me, make sure I'm in the room.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. And that's the thing about women. Sometimes we just don't trust each other because we're competing with each other. Not that you compete, not that I compete, but as a societal group, I would say that. And then the other thing, when you were talking about the men going after these women that are a certain way, do you think that there's a coarsening in our society and the bar has been made so much lower?
Yes.
As regard to even pop culture, singing groups, you had the Supremes, and now they're dressed elegantly, and now you have everything, anything,
Girl,
thongs,
Everything's
say
whatever.
that.
hyper-sexualized now.
Right, everything is sexualized. So our society seems to have lowered the bar in so many areas that we're just going with that because that's the norm now. Do you think that that's true?
I wholeheartedly believe that's true. And I'm glad you brought that up because I'm in the era of the Motown, and right now Smokey Robinson is hosting Soulville, and he talks about his best friend is Barry Gordy, and I've really studied Barry Gordy's his business model, and he was the whole packet. It wasn't about getting someone that could sing or getting the right song for that. He groomed them
Right.
I mean, they had to go to etiquette training.
Yes.
They had to learn how to dance. They had to learn how to sit. They had to learn how to
Mhm.
speak.
Right.
They had to be ladies. I mean,
Right.
100% ladies or gentlemen, and that was his model. But now, who's the one of the biggest entertainers, one of the most the richest entertainers, Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion. This
Yeah.
is the two
Yeah.
strippers.
Yeah, yeah. And notice Black China has stopped doing what she did and she's just going back to being Angela, just to normalize her life. And so we've
And
got it
who's this
out of the normal.
something red? I just heard something about
I don't know.
she
Yeah,
just
I know who you talked about. Boy, I'm trying not to gossip, but
Yeah.
well, I'm not either, but this whole thing started about the women are they had this. I saw a bit on social media about the women are out there saying they they're it's a new revolution about hypersexual is good. I'm like, okay.
Try
yeah,
hyper
you
intelligence.
need to Google her, and then you'll know who she is.
Okay.
So, since we talked about hypersexualization, and
Yes.
we're like halfway through, let's get on over here to the femininity in men and the emasculation of men. So, I know, Michael, when we talked about doing this podcast, it was because I think you shared a reel with me, and it was about the topic of femininity in women, and it showed the there was a lady interviewing um, women, asking, "Do you think that it's the men that want the BBLs and the bus jobs and all of that?" And I sent it to you, or you sent it to me, and the men were all saying, "No, that's not what they want." The women are out here changing their bodies, risking their lives, putting their health at risk for what they think men want. And the men actually said, "That's not what we're looking for." So on the flip, I saw a reel where these two guys um, were runway walking, baby, switching, twitching, doing all this.
Mhm.
And somebody commented that even though they look good, they're dressed nice, and they got that runway walk, they were emasculating men. So Mickey and I had a conversation, and I told her I was going to tag that on me here because that's not what I look for in a man. I don't want a man that shares my makeup, my fingernail polish, my scarves, and my turbans, and my purses, and can walk better than me. So I don't know if that's what men think is fashionable or stylish these days, but one looked straight and the other one looked just metrosexual. I couldn't tell. They both had on men's clothing and stuff, but man, they were very, very feminine. So I thought, let's talk about that because people are scared to touch that topic. We're not talking of anything against LGBTQAI plus plus or whatever. We're
Right.
talking about hypersexuality in men and women.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, and I've got a quick point on that, and then we can elaborate on it. But
Mhm.
they have always, as long as I've been alive, they've always been out there, but it's always been something that was a taboo, and they've always been in the church. Matter of fact, the music directors were always gay. They were always gay, and I went to all types of churches. I grew up as a Catholic, but I went to all the kind of churches because in my family they were Christians and they were Baptists and they were the holiness and the whole bit. And in my family, I had those. Some of them are gone, some of them are still alive in my family, but it's because of today it's becoming more of the norm because people are in power, and there is I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to say that. Not so much power, the popularity as well as the monetary power And that's why everybody is so-called coming out of the closet. I was
But see,
just
my disclaimer is that I don't know that they're gay.
Right.
They were dressed like you dress.
some of them are gay. Now I grew up seeing the male side of gay, but I also saw the female side. The female side of gay wasn't as much as the over dramatization of the guys. The guys wanted to be very, very feminine, whereas the very few of the females wanted to be masculine. That wasn't as appealing. There was a whole lot of females that were very feminine. uh, the dress was very feminine. The attitude was very feminine, but they were uh, totally homosexual in the sense of relationships with women. And I saw a lot of that as I got older in the military. There was a lot of that in the military, and they had to hide that a lot because it was frowned on in the military as well as in the regular society. So, so you saw guys trying to tone it down in the military, but the women had a lock on it. You couldn't tell one way or the other.
Do you think it's also true, since we're not really talking about someone's sexuality per se, we're talking more about their persona? These men who are dressed very well. I looked up metrosexual, and it describes a man who is very concerned with his grooming and appearance, generally spending a substantial amount of money and time on his appearance. So these men are dressed similarly, according to what Goldnbronze was saying,
Mhm.
but
They
one
look
was
like just very
moving
well dressed men.
right, and one was moving more feminine. Do you
Mhm.
do you think that it's possible that these men, you were raised with a lot of women, but I've known of some women who have had their sons, not that they're necessarily gay, come fix my wig, go get my dress, go get my shoes, and these boys are turned effeminate, but doesn't necessarily mean that they're gay, but they've been groomed to be that way.
See,
And that's
that's
why
where I
So,
was
do
you
you think it's
going with it,
possible?
Mickey. Thank you. That's
Right.
exactly the direction I was
Yeah.
headed. Thank
And
you.
that's
Yeah.
why you find a lot of hairdressers or cosmetologists. They are males, and
Right.
they're very, very much male. But
Right.
because of their background or their
Right.
upbringing, they've learned to do that. And you find a lot of guys over the years. I've seen a lot of guys that they're about as heterosexual as you can get, but they
Right.
can go in and they can work a woman's hair and do her makeup and all of that.
Right.
And certain women prefer them
Right.
over
Right.
another female. And
Right.
I think that what you're trying to say is that I think it's the way you were brought up or the way
Right.
where you were conditioned,
Yes.
would be a
Yes.
better word, that
Yeah.
how you turn out. Now, when you find these very feminine men rather, that are like that, I have two thoughts on that, because
Mhm.
I have a relative that from almost the time he was walking, he was feminine.
Right. Right.
And and his mother tried, his father tried all kinds of things, the psychologist,
Mhm.
the schooling, everything with him, and
Mhm.
he just gravitated to that. And he's a nice kid, he's a nice guy, he's a grown man now, but
Right.
it was almost like he was birthed that way. And there was
Right.
nothing, because he had an older brother, there was nothing that pushed him to that direction. He did it,
Right.
only he gravitated that on.
Interesting. So it could be nature versus nurture in that
And I
sense.
think it has to do a lot with physiology. I think that since we all start off as females,
Right.
and then we are given that extra hormone, I say sometimes there's just a little bit of a hormonal imbalance before the baby
Right.
is actually delivered. That just changes the mindset.
Yeah. Could
And
very well be.
and then when you see the people that are born with two sexes,
Right.
and so that's a very plausible reason.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I was looking at, we were talking about, what was the word? We were talking about emasculating men.
Mhm.
And when you emasculate a man, you deprive him of his masculine strength or spirit. So you're not encouraging that masculine side to him. sometimes we strip it from a man.
You strip it from him, and that
Right.
goes back to what happened to a lot of slaves. That was called
Right.
buck breaking.
Right.
That happened to a lot of slaves. Because they were in the minority, they had to figure out a way to control the masses. And what they would sometimes do would strip the slave, a male slave, and have all the other slaves stand around him, and they would beat him unconsciously, or sometimes they would rape him to break him down.
Right.
And and this is just another black part on our history in this country. But there's a whole lot of dynamics around that, and that subject is one all completely by itself about that. And then you got the incarceration, and people say, well, you go in jail, men having sex, and that's not about sex, that's about power.
Right.
That's about power. That goes back to the buck breaking thing. If you can break a man down, you can make him do whatever.
Right. And so when you see the man sashaying in the street, there could be many reasons for that. And it's unfair to jump to any one conclusion about the man, because that's real. People have emasculated men, and men are in dresses all the time, et cetera, and normalizing the emasculation of a man.
Exactly. And I'm glad that you looked up the definition of metrosexual, because I think that's my preference. Remember, I told you that, Mickey? I said I like a well-groomed, well-dressed, well-spoken, well-carried man, but I don't like a feminine man. He can't be.
And there's a big difference. There is a big difference. And I think that the guys that are very switchy and very handsy and very and dress wise, those are people that are lost in what their actual sexual preference is. I think they're lost. They don't know where they stand. And so what they do is they go with what's easier for them.
That's quite possibly true. They haven't quite identified with one gender or the other, is what you're saying. They're not trans. They dress like men, but they're very feminine. So
yeah.
And they about the hairdressers. Some of the men that are hairdressers are some of the best hairdressers. They can do some hair, but they're masculine. They have wives and families.
Exactly. And I've seen that a lot, and I've dated a couple of female hairdressers, and you go into the shop, and some of those guys, that's just like another job for them. They get their families and kids, so there's a whole lot of dynamics in there, and I think that's why when you have these people saying, well, if we just send them to these camps and straighten them out, I think it's sometimes it's the physiology. It's sometimes in the birth processes that things get kind of mixed up a little bit, and the person doesn't really know which way. And you'll find a lot of people that go ahead on and follow society's norms and get married and have kids, and they're not happy, and they keep having problems and so forth until they find their niche. And their niche could be another woman or another man. And you see that now a lot in celebrities now. What they call come out of the closet. And you see that a lot with celebrities and stars, or people that are attorneys that run corporations. And I think that's why it's so open now. Did we lose Golden?
She'll be back. She'll be back. She's just over there. But there are many reasons why people do what they do. And that's why this is such a good, rich conversation, because we could do part 2, part 3, part 4 on this one, because there's so much to this whole subject of masculinity, femininity. What is the root cause of that? And
that's another topic that I was just reading about that today. Whereas some people they've got this other thing where you don't just necessarily want to go with the same gender. You go back and forth.
This gender fluid.
Yes. What's her name? Janelle Monáe. She was one of the first people that not of knowledge, but of stature. She was an actor, singer, and she right off the bat says that, you know, she likes women sometimes and she likes men sometimes. It depends on the personality of the individual.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of gray areas in
Oh,
this
yeah.
whole subject. There's just a lot of conversations to be had about it, because I'm thinking of other things, but it'll take us down another rabbit hole, I think, about it, because we even kind of touched on women being not as feminine or maybe hyper feminine, but I think a lot of it comes from men. We follow the lead of men, I think, because naturally in the hierarchy, let's just be real, how it once was, men are the leaders and we follow them. And so if they're
Plus,
setting the tone, then that's what we're going to follow.
that's one part of the scenario. The other one is that women have morphed into jobs that were traditionally held by men. So women wanted to be better at the job, so they worked harder and they did things more precise, and they became better in a lot of times than the men. And but they also gravitated to the same problems that men have: high stress, early deaths, types of illnesses that was predominantly around men.
Right.
Like there's been more and more incidents, and by being a CCU nurse, I've noticed the trend starting around the 80s for me, watching that trend, more and more women having heart attacks at younger age.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in that same vein, women more and more are the breadwinners for their home.
True.
A lot of single parent households, and they're holding it down, and the men have just kind of left the premises, and in a lot of areas, not every situation, but when
But
a
you know
man
that
doesn't.
started right after the abolition of slavery, when we were
Right.
just thrown out there into the world with nothing
Right.
to start with. But what
Right.
happened is that we learned to become family units. But then the society decided that if we kept producing like we were producing and
Right.
becoming stronger in numbers, that it would upset the cookie. So what they did is they made it very
Makes you wanna
uncomfortable.
go.
Oh, I guess that's our signal.
It kind of is. My electricity is
Yeah.
going off, and I'm sorry I tried to text you
Okay.
both.
Okay.
To cut you off, but we are over our time.
Okay.
And I'm sorry about that. I did text you both to tell you my electricity went off. Everybody, I'm so sorry.
Oh.
Where I live, we're under a tornado warning. And so my electricity was flickering on and off. I had to
My
leave the
goodness.
stage for a minute. And I tried to text my co-host and my guests. And I do apologize,
We
everybody. But we
apologize.
want to thank you for joining us, Michael, in
My
engaging in this
pleasure.
conversation. And I want to apologize to you and Mickey G for just interrupting right now. But
Oh.
I had to get your attention, and I'm so sorry.
I didn't get an email, so I'm sorry too.
Yeah.
That's okay. And I want to thank you, Mickey G, for joining me today. Again, I
You're
want to apologize to the audience that I left and came, but we're in a tornado warning where I am, and the electricity was going on and off. And I'm just so glad that my co-host was able to keep it going in my absence. I was wondering about that. I want to tell you guys to tune in to VGN Network, Village Global Network. We're on at 10 a.m. every other Monday. So we were on last Monday. We'll be on a week from now on Monday. And Mickey G, real quickly, would you call up those radio stations, please?
Culture Shock Radio, Canada, Radio for CO, Mexico, Rockbox FM, USA, Wapter Music FM, Guadalupe.
Thank you, everybody. And life happens. Again, I apologize for the interruption, but we welcome you to come back again 2 weeks from now. We'll have another wonderful guest. We love you. Thank you.
Be safe, Goldnbronze. Be safe.
You too.
All
You
right.
too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Makes you wanna go.